One man who is adamant her influence is unjustified is the Conservative Bow Group's Benjamin Loughnane. He'll be debating this with the comedian and political activist Kate Smuthwaite, who thinks those saying Boris shouldn't listen to his wife are just sexist conspiracy theorists. Good evening to you both. Benjamin, you want Carrie investigated?
Well, I think it's totally normal that a wife should have influence on her husband. That's, how marriage works. They become one individual and they listen to each other and all the rest of it. But the problem really is the fact that she's lobbying the press. A lot of the policies that are coming out of the party are not stuff that were in the manifesto in 2019 during the election. They are things that have come along since, things like these animal welfare, great policy. Everyone, I think, agrees that we should look after animals. But some of the policies are so bizarre while things are going on, which are so much more important, that you have to look towards where that influence is coming.
OK, so how would the investigation work?
Well, we'd have to look into, whether these policies are being devised by the Conservative, party, by people within government, or whether they are coming directly from Boris and therefore from potentially the influence that his wife has on him.
I mean, would you not agree, though, that all prime ministers are, to some degree, influenced by their partner? He literally
said that to start with. That's like the first thing. Sorry to defend you, Benjamin. That's like literally the first thing he said, is that of course they are. And of course people are influenced by everybody that's around them. I think it's hilarious that we're talking about, the most powerful individual in the country. He has the freedom to access any advisor that he wants. He could call up, any university professor. He could call up any of us. I'm sure anybody in the country, if Boris Johnson said, I really want your advice, I'm trying to come up with a policy, please give me some input. I think anybody in the country would be keen to put their views forward. Everybody's got a view. Everybody wants it. There are lots of organisations, charities, trade unions who would love the chance to speak to Boris Johnson. If in the midst of this he is so clueless that he's like wandering around the kitchen going, oh, quick, where's my wife? Let's see if she's got an idea for a policy. Then that reflects on him, doesn't it? It's got nothing to do with her. I think what's happening is that his prime ministership is a disaster. We've got the pandemic, thousands and thousands of people unnecessarily dying. We've got the outcome of Brexit with lots and lots of freedoms being lost, people's incomes being lost, the whole thing being managed horrendously. We've got the after effects of austerity that killed thousands of people. And in the midst of it, rather than addressing the problem and sorting it out, people are going, oh, who can we blame? Is there a woman in the room? And it's just hilarious.
Okay,
Here
so
is a disaster happening.
I mean,
and rather than addressing the disaster, we're trying to pin it on a woman. He doesn't have to do what she says, and he doesn't have to listen to her.
OK, well, I guess a couple of things I'd say is the public clearly don't think he's a disaster because he's well ahead in the opinion polls and has been for months.
He's not past 50%, so,
But, Benjamin, is Kate right that you're just looking for someone to blame because Boris, who you were expecting to be this great Conservative Prime Minister, has maybe let you down on certain fronts, and so you're trying to blame a woman rather than blame the big bloke himself?
I actually really sympathise with what Kate's saying because I do think fundamentally the problem isn't Carrie, it's Boris, because if Boris wasn't so weak, Carrie wouldn't be able to have the influence that she has. But she is still, going beyond her remit. She is not elected democratically. She doesn't have any office that she holds by the convention in this country, so she shouldn't be determining policy, she shouldn't be lobbying the press. But the fact that Boris allows her to do that, that shows that he's weak.
I'm not sure that... It's interesting because I'm not entirely sure how on earth we would investigate to find out if this is... What we're going to do, like put cameras in their living room and in their hallway and see if she casually says, let's have a new environmental policy.
No, but we look at the relationship she has with the press, we look at the newspapers which are not reporting certain stories.
But they don't tell you anything about the influence that two people who share a home have on one another.
If you look at, for example, the recent story about the advisor of Boris at the moment, who is the best friend of Carrie, who was appointed to a job which was never advertised. It was never advertised publicly. She was given this job, and it's a, £350 a day job to do what? To give advice. She's also the nanny to Boris and Carrie's child, and she spent Christmas there in breach of the regulations, while everyone else, no one was allowed to see their families at Christmas.
But it is still Boris there.
Well, just to clarify, they say it wasn't in breach, but I would say it was against the spirit of the law, given that we were all locked up in our homes and they used a bit of a loophole.
I would say it was an outright clear and obvious breach, and that he should be you know, taken to court for it. And
well, Number 10 denied that they breached any rules because
well, of course
there's
they
this
did.
child
But I think
bubble.
the point is that Boris Johnson has the freedom to appoint who he wants. And, of course, he's going to start looking at people that he knows. I mean, of course, because that's what the Tories do. I mean, I'm sorry, but nepotism, they're not the only ones that do it, but it is particularly rife within the party, and we know it's been like that for a really, really, really long time. So it's absolutely unsurprising that he's doing this. But to me, the idea that what we need is an investigation into whether Carrie has too much influence. I mean, what we need to be looking at is what are the policies that are coming out of this situation. It's not who came up with them. It's like, are they good? Do they work? And the answer is, at the moment, no, they're not good. No, and no, they don't work. And I think it's a real waste, actually, you know, to be honest, Dan, of your airtime to be going, who invented these policies and was it a woman? When we could be going, do these policies work?
It's got nothing to do with the fact she's a woman, Kate. It's to do with the fact that she's unelected.
But it is to do with the fact that she's a woman, because
no, it's not.
There are so many other people who are around Boris Johnson. I mean, we didn't have this when it came to Dominic Cummings. We haven't had this for the other people.
You don't think there was scrutiny in the media of Dominic Cummings? Are you kidding me? He was talked about more than virtually any other man during 2020.
And what about Rupert Murdoch? What about the press barons? What about the media? When do we talk about their influence on these things? The fact is that she lives in his house, and of course she therefore has an influence on him. But the issue is not who has access to him. The issue is, what does he listen to? What information does he take on board?
Okay,
I'd be very surprised to discover that she actually spends all her time at home talking about policy. She's got a small child to look after. I imagine she's actually pretty busy. And I think that, you know, he's made all sorts of screeching, horrendous errors, and he's not doing enough about the climate. And if somewhere in the midst of it she says, seriously, you know, thousands of people around the world are already dying as a result of climate change, let's do something sooner rather than later. Well, thank goodness somebody said it.
OK, let Benjamin come in.
The problem is that wasn't in the Conservative manifesto, which people voted on. This is something that has come along in the past few months. Whether or not...
Well, no, I mean, there was a pledge to insulate homes in Britain.
You've had plenty of time to speak.
But if you say something that's not true, Benjamin, if you say something that's not true, then I will allow me.
Kate, you're being a bit sexist. You don't want to let the man speak. Give Benjamin a go.
No, he's saying something that's fundamentally untrue, Dan. And
I barely got to say it. I barely got to say it. So how do you know that what I was going to say wasn't going to develop into something that was true?
But you are not welcome to your own facts. Because you suggested
but you'll allow me.
Hey, why don't you give Benjamin a chance to speak, and then you can respond? That's what we call civilised debate.
Because I've been on your show before, Dan, and you very often cut me off, is the short answer for that.
Well, not today. You've had plenty of time to speak. But the thing is that some of these policies, which were not in the manifesto, that are currently being introduced, are very clearly not coming directly from Boris. The fact is that he is
very clearly. According to who?
Because if they were, then why weren't they in the manifesto?
But Boris can only read the manifesto.
If they were the policies
change
of this
things.
government...
I mean, I often wish they didn't, but they all change.
The point I'm making is that there are a number of people over the past couple of years who have been fired from the government, advisers and so on, because of press scrutiny. At the moment, people like Carrie Symonds, who has a huge iron grip on the press. She is the daughter of a press baron. Her ex-boyfriend, Harry Cole, of The Sun, is, you know, still the main scoop person in Number 10.
Yeah, but he's a great journalist. That's got nothing to do with
He's a great journalist,
Carrie.
Absolutely.
He's just a great journalist.
The point I'm making is that when it's a positive story, he's always the first on the scene. When it's a negative story, missing in action. This is the distinction.
I don't think that's fair on Harry Cole at all.
Not necessarily, but we start to see this thing where there are a few papers who report the bad stories and a lot of silence across the rest of the press, whereas all the good stories...
Kate, I want to give the final word to you, but I want to ask you something specifically. Mm-hmm. If you view Carrie as some sort of feminist hero, then wouldn't it be better for her to actually have an official role, an active role, actually get a job where she could influence things, run to be an MP, rather than sort of pull the strings behind the scenes? Wouldn't that make her much more of an icon, do the Hillary Clinton route into this and run herself?
So, first of all, no, I definitely don't see Carrie as a feminist hero or icon. I'm pretty sure that... moving in with and supporting Boris Johnson is not really the best way to, solidify your feminist credentials. There are front lines much more worthy of fighting on, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the feminist movement.
She fell in love.
But I absolutely think that if people want to influence public policy, they should get involved in those organisations supporting those charities, NGOs, trade unions, whatever it is that they care about, whatever they're passionate about. I think it's fantastic. I think we should all be more politically engaged and use these things to help people as well. well as to influence policy and all this sort of thing. But at the same time, I don't understand, you know, her role is that she's the Prime Minister's wife and she is involved with some charities and, of course, she cares about some things. What are we going to do if she has too much influence? I mean, fire her as Boris Johnson's wife? It's not a thing that we can do. People are always influenced by those around them. We have no idea the extent to which there is push and pull between the two of them. And so it doesn't matter where the ideas come. What matters is, are the ideas good? Are they constructive? Are they going to resolve the enormous and significant problems that this country and the rest of the world faces that we should be addressing on shows like this instead of talking about nonsense like this?
OK. Well, thank you for talking nonsense with me. You know I adore it, Kate Smuthwaite.
You're so good at it,
I'll have you back any time. Kisses to you, and Benjamin Loughnane too, from the Conservative think tank, the Bow Group. Thank you both so much. Coming up, there's still time for you to make your voice heard in tonight's Big Question with adventurer Adrian Hayes. That's at 10, Dan at gbnews.uk or at GBNews on social media.